Hi, I'm Leave with Professional Equine Grooms, and we're going to talk about grooming your horse and also how to pick the best products for your horse's grooming needs. Before we get started, let's talk about sebum. Sebum is the natural oil that your horse's skin produces. Each hair is contained within a little tube called a follicle, and attached to that follicle is a sebaceous gland which releases sebum to coat the hair shaft. Sebum has a few jobs. One is to be antimicrobial to help ward off bacterial and fungal skin infections, but it also creates shine in the summer and it waterproofs your horse in the winter. The first step in my grooming process is to take his vital signs, his temperature, his pulse, his respirations. I'm also going to check his gum color. And these give me an idea of how his body is feeling. To take a horse's temperature, I use either a digital thermometer or a non-mercury shakedown thermometer. A normal horse's body temperature at rest should be between 99 and 101.5. And it's important to know these values so that if something is outside of them, too high or too low, you know that something's going on. To take my horse's heart rate, I find the little artery here under his jaw and I press it down about halfway. And then I set my watch for 30 seconds and I count how many beats I feel, and then I multiply that number by 2. That gives me how many beats per minute. And a typical heart rate for a horse that is at rest is anywhere between about 24 and 42 beats per minute. To check his respiratory rate, you come back here towards the flank, and every time he inhales and exhales, that's 1 breath. Same thing with your timer, count for about 30 seconds, multiply by 2. A horse's resting respiratory rate is typically between 8 and 24 breaths per minute. I'm also going to check his gums to make sure they're nice and pink and they're nice and slippery. So first I'll check the color, looks great, and then I'm going to slide my fingers in between his upper teeth and his lips and make sure everything's very slippery and wet. If anything is dry or sticky or the color of his gums isn't pink, that indicates something's going on. Next, I do a whole body inspection using my fingertips and my eyes. I'm looking for things that might be different from the day before. So I start with looking at his eyes, his nose, his lips. I'm going to feel his ears. I'm going to run my hands through his mane. And then I'm going to move on to the big muscle groups in his body. Is he sore anywhere? Is he giving me a reaction? I'm going to go under the elbows, and I'm going to look under the tail and under the belly, especially around the sheath or the udder area. And then I'm going to inspect all of his legs. And I start from the top and work my way down. I'm going to feel all the muscles, looking for heat or tenderness or swelling, maybe an insect bite or a cut. Then I'm going to feel all the tendons and the ligaments and work my way down all the way to the hoof. When I get to the pastern and the fetlock and the coronary band, I'm doing the same thing, looking for heat, swelling, insects, any cuts. This is especially important around the coronary band because that's where the hoof grows from. I'll also brush off any dirt from the outside of the hoof. When I'm picking the hoof, I want to be sure to get all the grooves out around the shoe, and then I'll use my brush to get all the last bits out. I also want to make sure all the nails look good and the shoe is on there securely. When you're picking hooves, also be sure to use your nose and smell for any weird funky things coming from the hoof, which might indicate a thrush infection. And now we're actually ready to groom. The first step is to use a curry comb or maybe some curry gloves. It's important that whatever tool you use for currying your horse is comfortable with. So the gloves might work because you can vary the pressure. You might want to find a curry comb that is a little bit harder if your horse likes a deep muscle massage, or something that's a little bit softer like a jelly mitt. You could also go for a tiger tongue to do some currying with. It's a great idea when you curry to use circular motions because you want to bring up the dust and the dander from his coat and help smear some of those natural oils around. The next step in the grooming process is getting rid of all of that dust, dirt, and dander that you curried up. Grab a flicker brush. These are going to be longer and softer than your typical horse brush, and they're designed to sweep the hair and the dust away from your horse. Use a nice flick of the wrist. And you know you're doing this right when all of the dirt from your horse lands on you. You can follow up your flicker brush with a soft or a medium or a hard body brush, depending on what your horse is like. And these sweep along your horse to distribute those natural oils and any products that you have on and lay the hair down smoothly. And this brush is also nice to use on the face and the lower legs and other sensitive areas like the belly. Sometimes if the coat is really long or there's extra mud, you want to switch to a hard brush. Just be mindful that some horses really don't like this pressed firmly on their skin. And you would use a hard brush the same as you would a soft or medium one, just to get everything smoothed out. For the mane and tail, I go for a wide tooth comb or a brush that has lots of space between the bristles. I like to take care of manes and tails every day so you don't end up with a messy, tangled mess that takes a long time to undo. And I have a little bit of a system. First I go through and I pick out any little chunks that I find. I like to work a section at a time. So I'll grab a little bit of hair and I'll hold it at the top and I'll comb the bottom out. Then I can move on to the next section. Miggy's mane is roached, so I don't really comb it every day, but I sure put my hands in there to make sure I can't feel anything weird like a tick or a piece of shavings or anything like that. If you did have a mane, I would treat it just like the tail, where I'd pull little sections at a time and comb those through, and then they're good to go. One of the last things in the grooming process that I do is I'll take a clean rag, maybe it's a little bit damp, and I'll just wipe down his face, his nose, the corners of his mouth, and maybe his ears. I'm also going to do this for his tail. I'm going to use a fresh cloth, and I'm going to be sure to run my fingers up and down the underside of the tail to make sure there's nothing there like a small growth or an insect that could bother them. How do you know what products are best to use on your horse? Well, it depends on what your horse needs. My favorite product to use all year long is this Easy Out. It is a deodorizer, it is a stain remover, it lifts dust and dirt from all colors of horses, and it has optical brighteners in it, which are little sparkles that make your horse shine. I use Easy Out a lot when he has a stain, which is often. He has a bit of a stain here, so I'm first going to curry it and brush it, and then we're going to use the Easy Out. And I'm just going to give this a couple of squirts of Easy Out and let it set for a few minutes. After a few minutes, I'm going to get a dry cloth and just buff everything out. If you use a wet cloth or add too much product, you're going to end up with a bubbly, foamy mess. Stain is gone. If your horse of any color is really dirty in the winter and he needs a bath, but it's too cold, you can use a technique called hot toweling. You'll need a bucket and you'll need some hot water. And to this bucket, you're going to add some Easy Out. You don't need too much. If you use a bigger bucket, just use more. Next, you're going to drop in some cloths or some sponges and let them soak for a minute. When you're ready to hot cloth, grab one of your towels, wring it out really well. You want it to be barely damp. So now it is warm and steamy and it has a little bit of that wonderful Easy Out on it. And then you just use your cloth as you would a curry comb on your horse's coat. He shouldn't get wet. If he does get a little bit damp, cover that area with a cooler and then you can move on to the next section. If there's a lot of static in the air and your horse is getting little zaps of electric shocks while you're grooming, you can use Easy Out to help with that. Two different ways to do that. You can add just a spritz or two to your horse. The moisture is going to knock down all that static electricity. Or you can spray your brush and groom that way. My other favorite grooming product to use is the #1 light oil. It has vitamins and nutrients to condition the hair and the skin, and it's like using a conditioner or a lotion on your own hair and skin. Everything gets absorbed. There's also a #2 heavy oil, which just has a little bit more conditioning capabilities, and both of them are great for making the coat nice and healthy and shiny. You can use the light oils a couple of different ways. In the wintertime, I like to use a stiff brush. And I'll just put a couple of squirts on the brush, and I'm going to let the bristles get all of the oil distributed on the thick winter coat. I like to use a cloth to do a full body conditioning treatment with the #1 light oil. So I start with a bucket. I'm going to add hot water. And into the hot water, I'm going to put some #1 light oil. This is a small bucket, so if I used a larger one, I probably double that amount. Next, I toss in a cloth or two. Let them get nice and soaked. Swirl everything around. And then you can grab a cloth, give it a little wring, and you're going to have nice warm oil deposited on the cloth that you can just simply swipe on your horse. Do this hot cloth treatment as your horse's coat becomes a little drier in the winter, but also before you clip. Because when your horse is clean and shiny and has a little bit of grooming oil, the clipper blades are going to go through his coat really smoothly and there's not going to be as much pulling and tugging. I also love to use the #1 light oil as a deep conditioner for the tail. And I'll put about a nickel or quarter size drop into my hand, spread it around, and then I just work it into the tail with my fingertips. Let's pretend that you have a horse who has some scars or blemishes, or there's correction in his coat that needs to happen. You can use Show Touch-Ups. These are pigments in a can, and they help even out your horse's coat color. The white one is great for making your horse's socks be really, really white. They also come in other colors like the Palomino. There's also chestnut, there's dark brown, there's sorrel, there's all sorts of different colors, and you can blend them together for the perfect match. I prefer to use a brush to apply it, but you can spray these directly onto your horse. If you want to mix colors to paint on, you can get a little tray, add some color. This is the gray, and I'm just going to make it a bit of a darker gray by adding some black. And then you can paint this onto your horse's blemish. Show Touch-Ups are also great if you have a horse with a white tail that needs a little bit of brightening. Just take your Show Touch-Ups in white, fan the tail out, and lightly spray. For horses with thin tails, adding a matched color of Show Touch-Ups to the tail also creates volume, so it looks a bit fuller. These are also great because they come in so many colors that you can use them as part of your horse's Halloween costume. If your horse needs help growing his mane or his tail, you can use a treatment called MTG. You can also use MTG for skin conditions such as scratches or insect bites and rain rot. It can help with fungal infections and help treat sweet itch. You'll want to do a patch test on your horse before you use this product elsewhere on his body, and that just means that you're making sure his body doesn't have a reaction to it. So a little bit goes a long way, and you just want to put a couple of drops on your fingertips and then place that on the inside of his front leg up high and then wait 24 hours. If he doesn't have a reaction, you're good to go. When you're applying MTG, like to the mane, you can rub it into the skin at the base of the mane or the skin on the tail or anywhere on their body they're having an irritation. You don't need to use a lot, and it's best if you apply it at night. If you would like your horse to have a really nice glistening shine, you can use a hair polish like Magic Sheen. Now this is silicone based, however, it doesn't have added ingredients that will dry the coat out like some other brands. It's easy to apply. You can spray it directly on your horse, just not the saddle area, and you can use it in manes and tails as well. In the tail, Magic Sheen is a really good detangler, and it's nice to use before you pick or brush the tail. Same thing here, you can just fan the tail out and give it some sprays. And how do you know what kind of shampoo to use on your horse? Well, it depends on what his hair and his skin tell you. If he's sensitive in his skin, or maybe he has a skin infection going on, look for something that has added tea tree oil like this Medicare. It's really soothing and gentle, and it smells great. You can leave it on for 5 or 10 minutes or so to really help your horse's skin settle down and be soothed. If your horse just needs to get clean and shiny, you can use High Shine shampoo. This is very gentle, and it adds an extra layer of protection against stains. It won't take the sebum out of your horse's coat, which is great, and it makes him really shiny. If your horse needs some color correcting because he's sun bleached or he's just been clipped, you can use Equitone shampoos. This is the black one, but it also comes in red and palomino and the whitening formula for grays and whites. They add depth of color, and they also add shine and sparkle. We groom our horses for their health, and it's nice during that grooming process that we reward them and speak kindly to them and really take care of their mental and physical needs. That's what grooming is. Grooming is healthcare.